All right. Welcome everyone back to TestWizardry. After a couple weeks off, we're going to start up again, starting today with our introduction to web development. We're going to learn HTML, CSS a little bit, and JavaScript, maybe a little bit less. And then we're going to also work on learning to do test-driven development with Selenium, using Selenium to test our web app. So if you haven't joined TestWizardry before, let me share my screen and I'll show you a little bit about it. So TestWizardry is a program that I'm doing where I'm teaching software development and testing skills while we create together a game based on the Harry Potter series of books and movies. The idea being that you sign up to go to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and this is part of the game. You apply, you enter your name, your character name or whatever, and so forth, and then you will get whisked off to Diagon Alley to buy your school supplies, including your magic wand, an important event in any wizard's life, off to the King's Cross station to catch the Hogwarts Express all the way to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. You'll get off and go to the school, enter the Great Hall where you're greeted, and then the ritual of joining the different houses, Gryffindor, Slytherin, Hufflepuff, or Ravenclaw, will be decided by the sorting hat. And then after we get through this introduction, the game will begin in earnest. Although what we're doing for the learning here is going through the basics, the setup steps. So previously we had a course that introduced Java, core Java programming skills, and introduced Maven and TestNG as tools for building and testing your project. And so now we're going to take a step back and take what was a simple introductory text-based Java program and build a web application. So the first thing you need to do when you create a web application is you need a web page, and you need a web server to host it on. Let's start off without a web server, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to open my terminal, and I'm going to go to my TestWizardry directory, and what I want to do is I just want to create an HTML page. So I'm going to use Visual Studio Code. Well, I'm going to make a folder for my web application. So you can see I can go to my workspace. Now this workspace is an Eclipse project, or rather it's several projects, it looks like in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a directory, and I'm going to call it TestWizardry web. TestWizardry web, there we go. All right. So the first thing I can do is I can create an HTML page. So I'm going to start off, I'm going to open Visual Studio Code rather than using Vim editor. Welcome, Samia. Hi, how are you? I don't expect many people to come since I sent the last video, but how are you? Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, how are you?
Hi, Samia.
Hi, how are you? Everything's good?
I'm doing great. Now, since I sent a last minute invite, you're the only participant so far, but we're just getting started. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a web project, and we're going to build our app. We're going to build the front of our web interface for the introduction. So if you have seen any of the previous courses where we introduced Java programming and wrote a simple introduction where you essentially applied to Hogwarts.
Hello.
We're going to go beyond that. Can you go ahead and mute? We're going to go beyond that and build a web interface where you go to Hogwarts and you actually go beyond the application. You take the Hogwarts Express, you go to Diagon Alley and purchase your school supplies.
Hello?
Hello, I can hear you. Can you hear me? All right, I'm going to go ahead and just work through this. Go ahead and post something in the chat if you have a question. If you need to, you can unmute. All right. So I'm going to start in this phase of our project, we're building our web application. So I'm going to start off by creating our first web page. So just create a new file. And the first thing to know is that an HTML file is usually ending with the HTML extension. And by convention, the first page in a web application or a website is index. For reasons I won't go into, but index.html is the file we want to create. Now, HTML, oops, typo there. HTML is the document type, and HTML is a descriptive language for describing web pages. It's not technically a programming language, but it describes a document format, and the format of the document is HTML, and there's various tags. The first tag, that's the start and end of every document, is the HTML tag itself. You can see it starts with these brackets, or the greater than, less than. HTML is within those brackets. This is a tag, and to close a tag, you put bracket and then a slash and then the same. So we start an HTML document with just the HTML tag starting and closing. Now, an HTML document has two other main sections. It has a head section or heading, where you'll have things like the title, and we'll call the title TestWizardry here. So you can see each tag can contain other tags. Let me indent these to show our nested level. So our heading contains our title, which is TestWizardry. And then besides the heading, we have a body tag. And this body tag can contain more text. So we'll say, welcome to TestWizardry. And this is our basic web page. We have an HTML document that's bounded by this open and close HTML tag. And we have two other tags within it, head and body. The head tag has a title tag with the text TestWizardry in it. And the body tag, just for now, contains the text, welcome to TestWizardry. And we can actually open this in a browser. So if I open my browser, I'll just go to my open browser window, and I can go to the file. So I'm actually in this directory. So I would go to TestWizardry workspace, and I can paste the file in there. You can see it has, this is where index comes from. An index is a list of files. If I created a new file, right, like I can just touch a file and call it apply.html. And I'll refresh here. Now you can see I have two files. So this is like looking at my file explorer. I have my index.html, which I just created. That's this document. And then I have apply.html, which is actually blank at this point. So what I want to do is I want to open the index.html. And you can see it says, welcome to TestWizardry, just as plain text. And it has TestWizardry in the title. I can actually go through here. I can add text to my title, and I go over here. I hit refresh on this, and you can see the exclamation marks appear in the title bar of my browser. I can change the text here, welcome to TestWizardry, and refresh my browser again. You can see it adds the exclamation marks there. So that's kind of the basics of how to set up an HTML document. Now, let me see. Hi, Samia. Are you able to hear me now? All right, I'll go ahead and continue. Hello, can you hear me?
Hello?
Hi.
Sorry, I have bad connection, sorry.
All right. Well, I am going to record this and post it on YouTube as well. So if you can't hear everything, that's okay.
Okay, that's great. So I can check it on YouTube?
Yes. You just go to YouTube
Okay.
/oneshore, ONESHORE. I'll paste that in the chat. And it's not going to be on now, but it'll be on later.
Okay, great. So if I have any question, I will send it to you.
Yes, that's great. So can you just go ahead and mute?
Okay.
I hear some sirens in the background. Thank you. All right.
Yeah.
So I'm just going through the basics of setting up our first HTML document, and I wanted to introduce the tags. Every document starts with HTML and ends with it. And this is kind of the pattern of HTML, that everything has a start and an end tag, the head, the body, the title. Now, what we have now is essentially just a blank page. We have a title up here in the browser title bar, and then we have the plain text below. What we want to do is go ahead and add some other HTML tags and introduce those features. So for instance, probably the first tag that I can introduce is bold. Now there are tags that are for markup and tags that are semantic for describing the text. In this case, the bold tag is just for markup. There are other ways to do this. For instance, you could use strong instead of bold. And by bold, I mean B. B is an abbreviation for bold. There's some inconsistency in HTML. Sometimes it uses an abbreviation. Sometimes it uses the full word, like body versus bold, or head for heading. And then there's another tag called heading, apart from head, that was recently introduced to HTML. So there is some confusion. It's a growing and sometimes self-contradictory descriptive language. But anyway, so I'm going to refresh my browser, and you can see the text TestWizardry is now bold. Now, there are ways to separate your text, and we'll introduce another tag, which is called P for paragraph. Paragraph tag separates things into blocks, right? So we could say join the TestWizardry course. Let's be more specific. We're building our game right now here, right? So let's go right into it. Let's go apply to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. So we add another line in here, and it adds the line to our document. So that's a P, or a paragraph tag. And if I add more paragraphs, add another paragraph, refresh my browser, you can see it adds it each on a new line with a space in between it, like a paragraph formatting. So the P tag is somewhat of a semantic tag. It's used for separating paragraphs of text. I might have one sentence or more than one. It's also used sometimes for just putting a space in between, but we won't do that. Now, another tag I want to introduce is a heading tag. Remember, I said there's some self-contradictory. We have the heading section called head. We have a heading tag called heading. And then we have our heading tags, which indicate the level of heading within our document. So our first level heading, our main title of our document, not to be confused with the title here, but the big text that will appear is H1. And then there's other tags such as H2. We might call this a learning game based on Harry Potter. So we've got a heading 1, a heading 2. These all go down to H6. And we can see here, we have an H1 is bigger, an H2 is slightly smaller, and our normal text is smaller. So this is kind of an introduction to HTML tags. There are a whole bunch of tags. We've got a bold tag, which, as you can see now, all of this text is bold. So it doesn't actually show that difference. What we can do is we can make this italic instead of bold or plain text. So I is for italic. And an alternative to the italic tag, remember I said there's the bold tag. Let me indicate here. This is bold. So this text is bold. This text is italic. And I'll just go ahead and do this. Italic meaning the slanted font. Refresh here. This is bold. This is italic. And you can see that even though these are on different lines in my document, that they will be on the same line in my text, in my browser display. The P tag does separate it into separate lines, but without that tag, HTML strips white space. So spaces, if I add a whole bunch of spaces or tabs or new line characters, that HTML will strip all those off and just display it as is. This can be kind of inconvenient for when you want to format something within your HTML. There's other ways of doing that that are sometimes tricky, but it's also a convenience, so it allows our code to be easier to read in our HTML code. So this is bold, this is italic. Now, I told you there were alternatives. Strong is an alternative. It just renders the same as bold. But I guess some people thought that the word strong was more descriptive than the word bold, or maybe that was just longer. So we can say strong is like bold text. And we see that there. And then we can see that EM, which stands for emphasis, is like italic. And we refresh that, we see that there again. The idea being with strong or emphasis that you're describing something in a way that is semantically meaningful instead of textually meaningful. That's bold text as opposed to a strong statement, or it's italic text versus it's an emphasis mark. This might be a good time to introduce styling. So for instance, I can change the style of text as well. So I have this italic section of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. I can actually specify the style. Now, let me back up here. I'm not going to do that yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce one more tag, the anchor or A tag. I'm going to put this here. This is an anchor tag. Refresh my screen. And you can see it doesn't actually show anything interesting. But if I add within the tag, so within the brackets, if I add an href to apply.html, HTML, there we go. Now when I refresh this, it turns blue and is underlined. It's not that it's blue and underlined, is that the blue underline indicates that it's a link, which I'm sure you're familiar with if you've ever seen a web page. So it goes to the apply.html, which, as you remember, is blank. I can just start off and I can just say this is apply. This is actually a valid HTML document. Well, I don't know about valid, but this is actually an HTML document, and you can see it just displays the text. It doesn't have any HTML tag or body tag or head tag like the index does, but it will still display it. So we could actually grab this content here, paste it. We'll delete everything here except for so I wanted to keep that closing body tag. All right, so what I'm doing is I'm creating 2 pages. I have my index, which actually has all this content, and I have my apply page, which just has apply to Hogwarts. And if I click refresh on here, now I see let's make this apply to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. We can go back in our browser to the other page. And now when I click on this as an anchor, you can see it's turned purple. You've probably noticed this before. This means that it's a visited link. It's already been visited. The browser knows this. And I click on it, it goes to this page. I go back. So let's add a link here, a href. That means an HTTP reference. HTTP is the Hypertext Transfer Protocol. HTML is the hypertext markup language. Hypertext really just means text with hyperlinks, which means it goes from one document to another. All right, so I'm adding a link, go back home to the index.html. So in my index document, it says go to the apply.html file. And then my apply document, it says go back home to the index.html. So we'll hit this, we'll go here, and apply to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, click go back home. So we can go back and forth. So this is our first mechanism for controlling application or page flow. Links or anchors. We can go back and forth. Now, another thing that an anchor can do is it can link within the same document. If I do # or a hash sign, and I go to the top, then what it will do is it will create another link. Oh, I need to go back home. And now I go to the top. It doesn't actually do anything, but if I say, I'll put it here, a name equals top. And this is just putting an anchor. This is where the a name comes from, an anchor within the document. The original purpose of this was for creating footnotes. So I would put a footnote somewhere in my document, and then I would have an anchor to the bottom or wherever, in this case, the top. So what I want to do is I'm going to actually introduce another field called a text area. And it has an open and close tag, but this one actually doesn't have anything. Now this has a couple values in here. You notice how the A has the href. This is called an attribute. So text area, I'm just creating this to demonstrate how to get to the, I'm gonna make it to have, I don't know, 10 rows and like 50 columns. Rows means lines of text, columns means letters of text. I think that's calls, yeah. All right, so I refresh this and it creates this text area. I think I want to make it bigger. Let's make this like 50 and 100. Whoa. Nope, I made that 10 columns. But the reason I'm adding this is purely to, I'm going to add another tag called a form tag that this goes under, and I'll show you why in a minute. So it creates this big white square, and this is actually a text area where I can type in. But all I really wanted to do right now is to have a big square that I can, that it will make it so that my page scrolls. So I can't see the top. Then I click on go to top, and it goes to the top of the page. That's all I really wanted to demonstrate at this point. And I just used this big text area to demonstrate that. But I also want to introduce text area and forms. A form is the second way after a link that you can interact with a web page. So let's go ahead, and what I'm going to do is on the apply page, we're going to create an HTML form. Now, if you saw the video before where everything was created through a text interface that ran through the console, what we're going to do next is build our web interface. And because it's not a single line base, right? When you work through the text console, right, everything is a single line, right? I can echo, welcome to TestWizardry. And I can do echo, what is your name? That it's all one line at a time. And that's the way our Java application worked as well. What I was doing there was just writing a single line of code and having it immediately output, as opposed to a full program. But what we're going to do now is we can take the application process, and maybe it's worth going through that example right now first. So let me see. Maybe it's TestWizardry game, or that was called TestWizardry console. We'll get it. Okay, this is empty. Maybe it was TestWizardry Java core. All right, I'll go to target. All right, and then I'll do Java TestWizardry console, TestWizardry console.class. So I think this will work. All right, let's start that over. So here's my simple Java console game. Welcome to, well, intro to a game. Welcome to TestWizardry. What is your name? Well, my name is Aaron. Hello, Aaron. Are you male or female? I'm male. You're a wizard. If I was female, it would have said you're a witch, based on the Harry Potter terminology. Wizards are men, witches are women, or wizards can encompass both. Like mankind can encompass both. Okay, so how old are you? It says I'm too old to apply to Hogwarts. 45 is too old. Are you sure that's your real age? How old are you really? Hint, say 11. Well, 11 is the right age to be admitted to Hogwarts. So it says Aaron is an 11-year-old wizard. Congratulations, you've been admitted to Hogwarts. If I'm not a wizard, or if I'm not 11 years old, I don't get admitted to Hogwarts. And 45-year-old muggles like myself in the real world don't get to go to the School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. So that's the basics of my game. You notice how it was one line at a time output. I would type something, it would respond back, and I would type something. Well, HTML is cool in that you don't have to do it. That's the very old way that computer programs work. What I can do is I can actually create a form, and I can do all of these things, right? So I can have text. I'll create a paragraph of text, a P, that says, what is your name? And And then I'll create an input tag. Now, input is it's like a text area, but it's for a single line of text. And I want to call this, I'm giving this an attribute. My attribute input name, the name of my attribute is in quotes. I guess I'll just call it your name, so that I don't call it name equals name, which could be confusing, right? Well, let's call it player name because I'm the person playing the game. And then I have I can have a closing input tag, but it doesn't want me to do that. What it wants is what this says is when I have an element all by itself, I can do that element. And for instance, this is a HR or a hard return. It creates a line. And then what I'm going to do next, I'm going to create another paragraph. I'm going to say, are you male or female? And now I can start off. I'll do it. The name equals player sex, player gender. And then lastly, how old are you? Player age. And so now I have these 3 questions and these 3 input boxes. Let's see what happens when we go to our apply web page. Scroll down here. All right, so it says, what is your name? This line here is the HR, the hard return. And are you male or female? How old are you? I can type my name is Aaron. I'm male. And how old are you? I'm 45. It doesn't do anything yet though. I've created a document with a form. And what I want to do is move that hard return out of there. I've created a document with a form. It's not a very pretty form, I'll give you that, but it's passable. I can actually move these elements. So I've got these P tags, these paragraph tags. I can move my text into, or my input fields into those text areas. And then we'll see what happens there, is it will reformat my document. And I missed my tag here. So I'm nesting several layers of tags together, and it builds a document with this hierarchical structure. Right, I have everything is in my HTML document. I have just the title in my head or heading section. In my body section, I have a lot of things. I have this apply to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry as a heading 1 as big text. And then I have the link to go back home. Then I have this hard return. And these are all nested. Now I'm nesting again. I have a form, and in my form, I have these paragraphs, and each paragraph inside of it has an input tag, which has a name attribute, which actually just saves it for later. And now you can see it formats them all on the same line. Looking at that, actually, I'm going to go back the other way because it looks better to have them lined up horizontally, vertically instead of horizontally. All right, so we go here, and what is your name? Are you male or female? How old are you? All right, so I built the textual structure of what we're doing. The next thing we need to do is we need to be able to get that information and do something with it. So this is where there's 2 things we can do. One, we can send this information to the server, to the web application server, where it can be processed on the server and returned back to the client. But we can also do some things within the browser without sending anything anywhere. So let me introduce the HTML inspector. And what I should have done is I should have showed you how to get there. So I'm in Chrome, and what I can do is I can go to View, Developer Tools. And this is going to be important, especially for testing. You'll use this a lot. But in our developer tools, we can see a representation of our HTML, and we can actually click on an individual element, or we can highlight over an individual element. So you see this go back home link. I'm hovering over this in my dev tools window, and in my main window, it shows it has a blue outline on it, or a blue background, and it shows that it's 93.31 pixels by 18 pixels wide, 93 pixels wide by 18 pixels height, and it's an A tag. And I can click on form, and the form has all these other elements under it. What is your name? Are you female? How old are you? I can actually click on this little arrow and expand that. I can go to individual elements. What is your name? The player name input field. Are you male or female? This paragraph tag. Input name, and so forth. Now I can actually reference these elements in JavaScript in my code. So one thing I can do is I can hit Control F, and this is going to be really interesting. Now I can use the CSS selector, and the way I do that is I do name equals player age. I'll do this. So this is a CSS selector. So here in this little text box here, I hit Control F or Command F on Mac to get here. It then highlights input name equals player age. What it's doing is it's saying, give me an element with an attribute. I can even be more specific. Give me an attribute that is an input element. So we have 3 elements. Let's back up and do that. So I have input elements. It says input is 1 of 3. So I have input player name. If I click next, it'll go to the next one, player gender. Next, it goes to player age. And so I can see each of those ones. I can actually say I want to go to, specifically, I want to go to the input with the name equal to player age, player underscore age. And you can see it finds that element. I think I can put this in quotes too. Yeah, it'll take single quotes or double quotes and still find it the same, or no quotes. So this is what's called a CSS selector. CSS means cascading style sheets. Let me introduce how you can use CSS selectors as style, and then we'll go back to how we can do it with JavaScript. So I'm going to go to my source code. Now, I talked about making stuff bold or whatnot, bold or italic and so forth. We can actually specify the style, right? I can say the style of this paragraph tag in the attribute. I'm going to specify, oh, excuse me for yawning. What I want to do is I want to say my font weight is bold. And then if I refresh this page, you can see what is your name is now bold. Here's the next thing. To get back to that DevTools, I can right click or double click on a Mac on an element, inspect it, and you can see it goes here. And it shows my source code. The style font weight is bold. And over it here, it has these other things, which shows the CSS style of putting this. CSS is another display language that goes hand in hand. Like HTML, it's used for marking up the document. HTML defines the structure of the document. CSS defines the style of the document. And you can see there's some overlap here. They look different. Rather than these angle brackets, these greater than and less than signs that HTML have, CSS has these braces or curly brackets, as they're sometimes called. And you can see we've got 2 things. We've got element style has font weight colon bold. So it has these brackets, it has a colon, and then the semicolon. Like in Java, a semicolon means end of line or end of statement, so that you can put multiple ones on the same one. So I can do font weight equals bold, and I'll actually go over here to my document. I'll put a semicolon there, and I'll say color equals red. Oops, color colon red, not equals, not dash. And you can see my editor actually gives me a hint. This is something that Visual Code does. It gives me this hint about its color. That's not, whether it's a plain text document or not, they'll still do that. So I have a font weight and a color. I'll hit refresh on my browser, and you can see it's now both bold and red. And then if we go back to my inspector, we'll see font weight, bold, color red. And you can see those. What it's done is it's processed the text within my HTML style attribute, and it's generated this CSS, this cascading style sheet that says it's bold and it's red. And then here's some default displays for the P tag, the paragraph tag. Display is block as opposed to inline, because a paragraph is a block of text, meaning it has a vertical definition as well as horizontal. You could see, if we go back home, we have these other elements, right? This is an anchor, go top, or this is bold, this is italic. All of these things are on separate lines, but because they are inline elements. So if I click here and inspect this, we can see it doesn't have the display block. Now, I think there's actually, I can edit. This is something I don't normally do. But you can actually change elements in this DevTools. And I don't want to do that. What I wanted to do was I wanted to show you how we could actually edit the style. Anyway, we'll go back to our apply. We want to make this a link to apply rather than a link to this is anchor. Okay, there we go. All right, we're working on our form on our apply page as opposed to our index page. All right, so we can see we can change the style. There's another way to change the style, and that's what I wanted to demonstrate. Is you see how it has. Let's go back to this. What is your name? Because this will make it easier. We have style is font weight bold, color red. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make the next paragraph tag, are you male or female, have similar style. And the way I can do that is in our head section, beneath the title, I'll create a style section. Now, I just pasted this font weight bold, color red. What I want to do is I want to apply this to the P tag in general. So all paragraph tags will now have font weight bold and color. Let's change it to blue. No, let's change it to green. Make it pink, make it blue. And we go here and we can see here, now these two are green, but this one is still red. Why is it red? Well, that's the cascading part. We're defining here a general rule. All P tags, all paragraphs should be bold and green. Now here we're saying this specific P tag should have a style that's bold and red instead of bold and green. So cascading means, like a cascading waterfall, it goes down. So the more general rule is superseded by the more specific rule and so forth. Now there's one more level we could have. Well, actually several more levels of style sheets. For instance, we could say within all elements in our form, we could have style of, we can have a font family of Courier, which is like, you know, like a typewriter font. And now when we go here, we can see that it has this Courier font. What is all elements within here, including, excepting our input tags, which is kind of strange. We can apply formatting to our input tags, right? We can say our input tags all have a font family of Courier 2. And that'll apply to all inputs. I hit refresh, and now we can see it has this monospaced Courier typewriter font in all of these ones. All right, so this is all well and good for learning HTML and CSS. The next thing we need to do is we need to interact with it. And remember, I said we can do it one of two ways. We can send the information, the name, the gender, and the age, all to the server, or we can work with them on the browser without sending them. And that's what JavaScript is for. JavaScript was early added to web browsers, to Netscape Navigator version 2 or version 3, way back in the mid 1990s. For someone who's my advanced age, that doesn't seem very long ago. But for some of you younger people, that might seem the dark ages. Even before most people had cell phones, believe it or not. All right, let's go ahead and remove some of these styles that aren't really relevant to what we're doing. We'll just leave that font because we're going to do something with the fonts tomorrow. We're going to do a little bit more styling. And then we're also going to set up a web server so we can do things. But today, we just want to use some JavaScript. So, and this is something I don't know how the console reacts, but now I can find an element, right? I've got this input name player age. Now I can actually do this in JavaScript. And first I'm going to show you how to do it in the DevTools console, and I'm going to show you how to do JavaScript in your app. So within your HTML document. So what I do is I can document is the root of everything. You can see it highlights the whole page. I can do document, I can do find, or I can do get element by ID. Now I don't have any ID. I can do get elements. I can do get elements by tag name, or I can do get elements by name. So let's do get elements by tag name. Oh, I didn't put a tag name. Okay, so document get elements by tag name. We want input. And we can see we have these three elements: input 1, input 2, or input 0, input 1, and input 2, because just like Java arrays, JavaScript arrays are 0-based. So the first element is 0. Second element is 1, and the third element is 2. You can see how it highlights name, gender, age there. And then we have some other things that are probably a little confusing. We have this JavaScript prototype, which goes deep. We're not going to look at that. Just ignore that stuff for now and know that it's the innards of how JavaScript interacts with the document. And probably the next thing to introduce here is when I talk about the document and how JavaScript interacts with it, it uses the document object model. And you may have heard of the DOM, how you can manipulate the DOM or style the DOM. Or if you're using a tool like React, it has a virtual DOM. You may have heard that. The DOM is the document object model. And that's this hierarchy of HTML, right? This document starts with an HTML element. It has a head and a body. The DOM primarily is concerned with the body. The object model of this body is it has an H1, it has an anchor, it has a form, and the form has multiple P and input tags, paragraph and input tags. This is the document object model, and the form has a style, this input has a name, and that's the document object model that JavaScript knows how to interact with something. All right, so we can see we can get elements by tag name. We can actually, we can call this, we can create a JavaScript variable just with var. We can actually ignore that for now. We can just call it input fields equals document.get elements, plural, by tag name input. So it gives me my 3 input fields, right? And it's the same as we had before, this HTML collection: input player name, input player gender, input player age. And then we can refer to them in an array, right? We can go to input fields, and I want to get input fields 1. You can see it highlights gender, and sure enough, its input name is player gender. I can also get the value of this, and it returns gender as the value. Now I could change this to male, and let's do that. My name is Aaron, my gender is male, my age is 45. I put all that information, and then I go back to my console, right? And I can say input fields 1 value is male. I can actually change it, at least within the web page here. I can change it, and you can see it edited that text. I can do the same thing to the name. Oops, I wanted 0, not 2. I can change my name from Aaron to, well, let's change it to Hermione, the female that I know best from Harry Potter. So Hermione is a female, and she's not 45. Let's change this to, she's 11. And here in my JavaScript console, within the Chrome DevTools, it allows me to interact with and manipulate my web page. So now we have Hermione is a female who's age 11. And I all did that by manipulating JavaScript. A normal user doesn't do this, right? A normal user just types it. But this allows us to work with our program to make these changes. Let's go ahead and do this. Now, instead of through the DevTools console, let's make that disappear. And let's refresh our page. What we want to do is we want to do this through JavaScript. And so the way we do that is, well, let's start off doing this a different way. We have our form. What we want to do is we want to create a script. So we start off in the header. We create a script tag. Technically, this can exist in the header or the body. What happens is it's kind of a hack to put it in the body. But the reason you would put it in the body is to make sure the page renders before it does anything. So the first JavaScript command we're going to add is an alert. It's going to pop up a window. We're going to say alert, welcome to TestWizardry. Let's add an exclamation point. So this is my first line of JavaScript, and let's do it. It pops up and it says, this page says, welcome to TestWizardry. Okay, and then it loads the page. I can hit refresh, and I can see that over and over again. I can then add another line that says, would you like to apply to Hogwarts? There we go. I'll hit refresh again. Welcome to TestWizardry. This is so exciting. Not really. Okay. Would you like to apply to Hogwarts? Okay. That was pretty cool 25 years ago when this first came out. Really blew people away that you could build a web interface so easily, and it could have interactive elements like pop-up dialogues, which are annoying for the most part. Since you've been around for a while and used the web, it's probably a lot less exciting, but we're going to learn how to work with that. So rather than alert, we can prompt, right? And we change it from alert to prompt in the text. And now we say, welcome to TestWizardry. Would you like to apply to Hogwarts? And I can say yes. Okay. Well, that doesn't do anything. So what we want to do is we want to create a variable. And we specify it with var for variable. And we'll just put apply equals prompt. So what prompt does, prompt is a function, much like a JavaScript or much like a Java function, but simpler in a sense. What it does is it takes an argument, would you like to apply to Hogwarts? And it calls the prompt function, which says create a pop-up on the screen that has the text, would you like to apply to Hogwarts in it, as well as now an alert just displays that and an OK button. A prompt displays that and an input field. This part of it, this is important to know when it comes time to automate with Selenium. This part is not a part of your document object model. It's not a part of your web page per se. It is a browser dialog. And the reason this is important is to use automation tools like Selenium. Interacting with these prompts is a vastly different and not really how you would normally work with Selenium. Your main job with Selenium when someone pops up an alert like this is to dismiss it or to get past it, because Selenium works with the document object model. And you can see this script isn't part of the document object model. It's not in the body, although the script interacts with the page, and we'll see how to do that later. Anyway, so we've got this prompt, and then here's what I can do is I can alert the value of apply. So let's go ahead and do this. Welcome to TestWizardry. Would you like to apply to Hogwarts? Yes. And then it prompts, this page says yes. That's the value of my response here. So let's do this one more time. Welcome to TestWizardry. Would you like to apply to Hogwarts? No, I'm a stick in the mud. I'm a muggle. This page says no. So we can see we've got a prompt, and now we're interacting. We get variables from our functions which display these pop-ups, take our inputs, and then we can interact with them, right? We're pretty much out of time, but I'm going to take one more minute to show you. Rather than alerting it, I can do console.log apply. Now, let me just run this and show you what happens, and then I've got to go. Welcome to TestWizardry. Would you like to apply to Hogwarts? Maybe. It just loads the page, but when I bring this up over here, it printed in my DevTools JavaScript console, maybe. So I can interact without putting a pop-up on the screen. So tomorrow, we're going to work on taking this beautiful web application we've created and running it through a web server. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take from the basics we've done, the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript, and we're going to start building the application process. And we should have a working form where you can submit your form and either be accepted or denied from Hogwarts tomorrow. Something that took us 2 weeks to do, building a Java console app, should take us 2 days with this introduction to HTML, CSS, and JavaScript today. And then we'll go beyond that tomorrow. All right. We'll talk to you later, and hope you are able to see this and enjoy it, and see you tomorrow.